Hello, this is Coach Tim Campbell, and I'm your host for the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show, where we are chatting with business owners and entrepreneurs to learn their journey of building their business. And because we know that success in business doesn't come alone and in isolation, we're taking some time to recognize the folks who have helped us along the way and give them some shout outs and share the ways that they have helped us to build our business. Today, I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us. My guest was part of a 3,200 meter relay team in high school, and she broke the school record for the fastest time. Her favorite thing to do in her downtime is to go to the beach with her family and brunch with girlfriends. And she's most proud of creating something that has enough potential in the marketplace that she was able to get her business partner to join her on this adventure. It's my pleasure to welcome Megan to the show today. Hello, Megan.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's start with having you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit of your personal story, where you were born and live, and your family, and some of your hobbies.
So I'm from Northern Indiana. I grew up in Fort Wayne. I went to college at IU, so down in Bloomington. After college, I moved around a little bit and then ultimately landed back here in Indianapolis. I've been here, I guess, ever since 2007 and got married. So I married my husband, Peter, and I live in Westfield with our two kids. We have a daughter, Leah, who will be 7, and a son, Henry, will be 9 actually this summer. So they keep us busy. We have a German Shepherd, and we love Westfield.
Fantastic. Well, we are neighbors. I'm in Noblesville, but right on the Westfield border.
We are neighbors. We could have just met in person. It might have been easier.
Right? Is there a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us today?
So I don't know how funny it is. It was funny to me, but when I was growing up, as a teenager, I was a little bit rebellious. I've always been a risk taker, and I was always with my friends. I never wanted to be home. I was always on the go, and I think this really just gave my parents a run for their money. And so when my husband actually went to ask my dad's permission to propose, I guess I didn't realize how much of a run for their money I gave them. But my dad, he immediately was like, yes, of course. He's like, but man, if you have a daughter, good luck. She was a handful. That's literally the first thing he thought of and the only thing he said. And I was like, well, okay.
That's awesome. Hey, Megan, tell us, how did the business come about? And at what point did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
So I worked at a dental practice here in Westfield, and I wasn't, it was really more of a stepping stone job for me. I thought at the time I was looking at going back to school for education, and we were getting married. It was kind of a personal transition time in my life. And so when I started working in this dental practice with my friend's husband, um, I had a little bit of a different perspective when I started working in the practice than maybe some dental office administrators. And it was very clear to me that, there were just so many nuances and inefficiencies within the practice and challenges with dental insurance, specifically when patients were asking, me for advice or guidance on what to do because their dental insurance was changing. And so it was a little bit baptism by fire, where I learned more the business side of how to run a dental practice. And I stayed there much longer than really either one of us ever intended. And the doctor opened a second practice, so I kind of helped with that business transition and just working with the patients and trying to help them solve a problem and come up with a solution for dental benefits we really, learned that cutting out the middleman in dentistry is really advantageous for patients and for the business owner. So we kind of created this organic homegrown plan in the practice and started offering it to our patients, and it created this solution, that ended up really working out so well, both for patients and for for the business. And I'm not sure I would say I ever was like, yes, I'm confident this is something that I can do. And, this is the time. But what I was confident in is that I was confident in the solution. I was confident that this was a great solution for patients and for dentists, and that we had great experience and exposure to all different sides of the business, including the legislative side, which, we're in a regulated space. And so we just had all of the pieces that are really necessary to do what we do really well. So I was confident in that. And then I had some cheerleaders behind me, namely, the dentist and my husband at the time, really kind of pushing me forward. So I relied on their confidence and just kept putting one foot in front of the other.
I love it. That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about the company. What's the name? What do you guys do? How do you help people?
Yeah, it's called Plan Forward, and it's a SaaS software that we offer to dentists. So our customer is the dental practice, and they use our software to offer subscription plans to uninsured patients. So the plan itself is what we help the dental office create and price and give them marketing materials and training and kind of support them getting it off the ground. And then our software is really the engine that white labels all of this for the practice, and it runs the subscription, if you will, within the dental practice.
Fantastic. And for those listening, if you're not sure what SaaS is, it's software as a service. So think of, software programs that are sold like a product, except it's software, right?
Yes, exactly. So once we implement the practice and they start using our software, it's kind of a continual relationship. As long as we're doing our part and the patients are happy, we're pretty much stuck together.
Awesome. So you mentioned this already a little bit, but tell us a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, even though maybe you weren't sure that you could, and the impact that person had on you.
Yeah. There was one, so we're 5 years in, about 5.5 years in, and there was one specific quarter that was just really, really hard. And I remember we were at the very end of our cash flow. Our pipeline, wasn't looking super strong. Our prospects were also facing lots of challenges themselves. And so our sales cycle was taking longer than it ever had before. And it was a struggle. And at that time, I didn't know the answer, and I couldn't see the business surviving, truthfully. And I was in a meeting with my two closest advisors, Mike Reynolds and Scott Craigie. And I remember that, I was terrified, and I could tell that they knew I was terrified. And so they were like, well, what's the absolute worst case scenario? And I was like, well, we have to shut this down. Like, we're done. And they were like, okay, well, let's talk through that. And so we did this visualization, and we went through this exercise of the absolute worst case scenario and the steps that, would have to be taken and how we would actually shut the business down. And after going through that process, it almost removed the fear of, it was still a terrible time, but it was just going there and talking it out loud helped to kind of allow myself to look past it. And so once we did it, they were like, okay, well, how do you feel? And I was like, well, it was awful, but I'm not ready to be done yet. I still want to keep going. And so they're like, okay, well, then what was next was, what are the hard decisions that need to be made right now, quickly, to survive? And that was not a fun process, but it was this has to be done, or else this worst case scenario is going to happen. And so I think, it was absolutely the hardest time as a business leader, but it was such a moment of growth and just such a powerful moment from just a leadership perspective. And, it's part of the territory.
Wow. I love that idea of what's the worst case scenario, so that you can just experience it, right? And live it a little bit and see what that's going to feel like. That's a great exercise.
Yeah. It's hopefully you're visualizing positive experiences too. And thinking about what's the best case scenario to help motivate you to get there. But at the same time, sometimes you have to go the other way too, to understand that the world will still keep spinning and, there you have choices.
Yeah. Well, to build on your point, that's an exercise that we typically do with our clients. What's the worst case? What's the best case? What's the
Yeah.
most probable? All right. So now that you've had those emotions, now let's move forward with the most probable. All right.
Yeah.
And put strategies in place to mitigate against the worst case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
Um, don't let yourself get too high and don't let yourself get too low.
Hmm.
And I think that so I work with a professional coach as well. And I think we discovered in one of our more recent meetings that I think that's almost like a survival tactic that also sometimes can work against you because you don't necessarily let yourself feel the highs and lows and kind of process those emotions. And I was on a flight literally the day before we started Plan Forward, and like the day before day one of doing this. And this guy on the flight was an entrepreneur, and he said, I think this was like, an intervention, a higher power, like put this guy next to me. And he said, the first 2 years are going to be brutal.
Hmm.
Just get through the first 2 years. And I never forgot that. And so I allowed myself to not have any work-life balance, to just go all in for the first 2 years. And so I did that. And then it was don't get high, don't get too low. And I think that was kind of the survival mechanism that allowed myself and the people around me to like keep pushing this thing forward until it kind of got started to get some legs.
Yes.
Um, but I think the other biggest thing that for me, I'm a little bit of a people pleaser. I've become less of one, but it's also the biggest learning is not everyone is going to understand your decisions, and not everyone's going to agree with them, and not everyone's going to like you, and you have to be okay with that, and that's okay.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yes. What's the famous saying? Other people's opinions are none of my business.
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely true. It's like something that, I think sometimes, especially for people pleasers, that's a hard thing to remember.
It is, yes. And you mentioned the emotional, the ups and downs. I call that the emotional roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
I've been in this mindset coaching program for about 2 years, and one of the things that we learn in that is our feelings are real. They just may not be the correct feelings because they're tied to a false belief, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we believe, sometimes we as business owners, we can get caught in the wheel of, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not capable, I'm not going to be able to figure this out, right? And
Yeah.
like, well, no, those aren't true, because look at the things I've done in my past, right? So
Yeah.
now we can change that feeling, right? And it smooths out that roller coaster ride a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and imposter syndrome is so real.
Hmm.
Especially if you're someone like myself who I never aspired to be an entrepreneur. I never thought I would ever own my own business or take this leap.
Yeah.
And so to just kind of find myself in this position and growing, and it's working, and to then have to continue to kind of find that confidence and
Yes.
tell myself like I've
Yes.
earned this seat at the table. And
Right. Yes.
it's hard.
Yes. And it doesn't help when, of course, everybody on social media only puts their best foot forward, right? So
Definitely.
I've heard a lot of folks say, "Hey, Tim, we do events where we bring business owners together, and they get to share some of those realities, and they're like, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one that
Yeah.
thought that way or struggled with that, and now that I've heard that everybody in the room does, it's just this big sense of relief of, oh, so we're kind of all in this together."
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, that's another thing, a learning, have other founders and CEOs, in your circle, because it's hard, it's lonely at the top, as they say.
It is, yes, indeed. So Megan, we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So kind of building off of what you just said,
Yeah.
tell us about, if it's the same story, then we can skip through this, but what's the biggest challenge you had as a founder over the years, and
Yeah.
who's somebody that came alongside of you and helped you to get through that challenge?
Yeah. Well, ironically, it's the same advisor. Obviously, he's had a big impact in helping, Plan Forward get to where it is. But a couple years ago, we went through a company recap, and it was basically, changing the ownership structure of the company from when it was originally founded. And as you can imagine, that's a really hard thing to do. We had investors, we had, founders, business partners, there were a lot of people that had different perspectives. And this, Scott, my advisor, was able to help me walk through, and filter these different scenarios and talk through, and take emotion out of it,
Mhm.
and help, and help kind of shepherd me through that process with doing the recap. And he also had a loud voice at the table, and so I think going through that experience, and I mean, it was every bit of a 5 or 6 month process
Mm.
that was just incredibly stressful. But I think going through that, having Scott, having a professional coach that I work with, my husband, those are some of the core people that at the end of the day, I don't know if I would have been able to push through that process without those people.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned earlier it being lonely at the top and having these decisions that, we've never faced before and having to sort through them. So it's great to hear that you've had, people that you could rely on to think things out loud. Because oftentimes that's that's really the best part of it is, right, be able to bounce some ideas out loud and get other people to pick it apart and flip it around on us. And everything that we need is really inside of us, but we don't always know and appreciate that, right?
Well, and another thing I think, at least for founders who end up taking outside capital, um, sometimes your advisors are your investors, and it can be
Mhm.
hard to share the things that terrify you and the scary stuff and the bad stuff with the people that also invested in the company and
Right.
had confidence to support you. And so, while I think most investors understand, especially if they were founders at one point or an operator, they expect you to have that and they want to hear that. But from my seat, it can be really terrifying to really open up and to be honest about what's going on,
Right.
to get the help that, in the direction that you might need.
Yes. Hey, folks who given me all your money, I just made a bad decision and lost some of it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, it's a great way to get your board to, to question your leadership real quick.
I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Three people that in your business owner journey that you're most grateful for being there to help with your growth. Who are those three people and how'd they help you?
Mm. Well, it would be an absolute miss if I didn't say my husband. Um, and not because he's my husband, but he literally, we have two small kids. We started this when they were 1 and 3. And so financially, he's helped back the business and the family. And emotionally, he's, held me up when I, maybe wasn't at my best, and just literally taking care of the kids when I was all in on the work. So, I mean, he's hands down the one that deserves, all the credit, to be fair. But in the business world and the business community, people outside of my family, Scott Craigie is absolutely, number one. These are all number one. Mike Reynolds and really Lacey Lavies at Innovate Map. Innovate Map has just been a huge, huge supporter and cheerleader of us. They've, done a lot of work with us, but not only, do I love working with them. They're friends at this point, and they really just support. They've supported me in the business, even when I'm not working with them. I know I can call, and they're going to help however they can. And I think the third one is Jenny Vance. She's still in Indianapolis. She's been a huge member of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, and she's just a sales guru or a revenue generation guru, growth guru. And she was someone who I connected with early on when we had our MVP, and I was like, okay, how do you build this thing? And I had no idea. So I combed LinkedIn to find someone local who I was like, I want to meet that person to figure out how to sell. And that person was Jenny Vance. And luckily we had a mutual connection. They put us in touch. We met at the speakeasy. And she, not only did she impress me from day one, but she championed me personally as,
Mm.
you can do this. I see this business having value. I can see you being a leader, have confidence. And so even still to this day, if I'm having a really challenging, if I'm going through a difficult decision, she's my first phone call, because she's someone who I can be totally my authentic self, and she'll give me the goods, the bads, and the uglies. So
Yes.
um, she's probably the other one on that list.
That's awesome. I love that you mentioned be your authentic self. So it takes away a lot of stress to not have to, dress up in a certain way or pretend to be a certain person, right? And there's just not enough time and energy when you're in a startup mode, right?
Yeah.
To be faking it, right? You've got to be all in, just doing what's required. So that's awesome that you've got people that you can just be your true self with.
Yeah, I mean, truly, there's no other way to do it. To your point, there is not enough time to even consider, being someone else. You're just all in all the time.
Yeah. As you think about the next 3 to 5 years, what are the biggest challenges that you see that you're going to face to in getting to your goals, and who are the types of people that you'll need to help you solve those problems?
Um, I can feel it, and I believe we're at just this kind of this critical scale point. And the thing that makes the engine move is people and the team. And we are at this point where we're going to be adding to the team, and it's all about the onboarding and the training, and making sure you're hopefully vetting people and getting the right people on board that want to be here. But also, I think there's pressure too in, people are people. People are
Mhm.
complex. It's hard, as a leader. It's, you want to build a good culture, and you want this to be someplace people want to be. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. So I think for me specifically, for I have a co-CEO now who, which is just has been an amazing experience, but I tend to focus more on internally in the business and the operation. So I'm heavily involved when people, join the team. And so I just feel that obligation and, desire to create something great that people want to be a part of. But I think that people are the biggest challenge. So I think building the team over the next 3 to 5 years and really making sure that the company is what we hoped it would be from the beginning,
Mhm.
is going to be one of the biggest challenges.
I like your perspective of having a place that people want to be a part of, right? Creating that culture that folks enjoy and they tell others about, because um, at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time at work, and so having it be something that we look forward to doing and something that we enjoy and that we have relationships and friendships at work, and right, and we agree with the bigger goal or the bigger purpose of the organization. Is we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and so I love that you're intentional about creating that environment and that culture, and bringing the right people on board, because we've all had experiences where we brought on the wrong people, right? And realize, oh, that's not a good cultural fit.
That's right. And it's like, oh, go back to your, interview questions and, try to add some more to kind
Uh-huh.
of, what did we miss here? How did we miss the boat? I think everyone's been in that situation. And so just trying to do a good job, up front too, of bringing on the right people, because not only is it, it's a risk to culture, but it's also so expensive and time consuming when you do bring on the wrong people. Um,
Yes,
and
yes.
anyway, enough said. But actually, I did want to add, I use that with my kids to try to motivate them. I mean, they're little still, but they're like, Mom, do you have to work still? When are you going to be done working? And I'm like, listen, this is why it's important to do really good in school and do your best, because you're going to have to work when you're done with school. You want to do a job that you want to do. You want to be able to choose the kind of job you want to do.
That's awesome.
Try to use that as an example.
There you go, right? Being able to use the same examples in two different, in your two different lives, that's very efficient.
Right. I'm all about efficiency and scalability.
Last question, Megan.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn, awesome business guru and author. One of his quotes is, "We become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with." So as you think about that, what advice would you have for business owners and founders and entrepreneurs who are trying to do it on their own, who think that they can't ask for help, they shouldn't ask for help, they just got to do it themselves?
Yeah. My biggest advice is stop trying to do it by yourself. And I mean, literally from early on, my advice, we were thinking about and looking for really a co-founder or a co-CEO, because especially, and we get pushback on that sometimes, and people question, how does this co-CEO model thing work? And there's a great article by Mark Benioff about the co-CEO model. And especially at our stage, it's been so amazing. So I would recommend, specifically for that kind of that startup phase, or when you're going through kind of the capital raise before you're maybe profitable, that 2 CEOs is so amazing, because you tend to be doing 2 full-time jobs anyway, on top of a personal life, if you have any, if you have a personal life at that point. But, one person to work outside of the business and on the business strategically, and the other person to really work in the business and manage the business. It is just, it's made a world of difference. And it's allowed me to take this job, and, that's really become more than a job, that's stressful and it's anxiety provoking. And, there's a lot of, heavy emotions and thoughts that go into trying to grow something, but it's taken that and it's made it something that really is like fulfilling, because I have a business partner that, is in it with me 110%. And so maybe it's not doing a recap, bringing somebody in and having a co-CEO, but, having that person that's in the trenches with you and as dedicated and invested as you are, it just divides the weight of it all, and it somewhat allows you to just enjoy it a little bit more. And when I talk to entrepreneurs who are at my similar stage, or people that I've met who where we kind of all started together, almost everyone is like, where did you find your co-CEO? How did you find your co-CEO? I've been thinking about something like that a lot, or I want to bring on a COO, somebody who's in it with them. And I wouldn't hesitate. It has been the best decision that we could have made for the business.
That's fantastic. You've also talked a lot throughout this interview about your outside counsel and advisors and stuff. So just share a little bit more about the value that they've brought to you guys.
Oh my gosh, immense value. Advisors, I think, select them wisely and choose. I got advice at one point, choose an advisor for kind of each area of the business. And when you think of the different functional areas of the business, pick someone who's done it before and is ahead of you, because they just have such insight into what you will likely be facing, and they've been there. Yeah. And so from formal and informal advisors, there's no way that you can be prepared for everything you're going to face. And when you are faced with these difficult challenges, you usually need answers quickly. You have to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone who's got some context about you and the company, and maybe where you've been and where you're going, so that they can help guide you, or at least give the best, recommendation that they can. If you're coming in cold, no, the person doesn't know you at all,
Right. Yes.
it's going to be harder to get good advice from somebody because they don't really know the situation.
Yes. You made it, that gave me a picture in my head of, when you call IT, for a problem, right? So if the plane is diving, what you don't want the person on the other end of the line is, well, have you plugged it in, right? Have you,
Exactly.
have
I
you
need you
turned
to
it
meet me
off and
here
on?
where I'm at. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Where's the extra engine? Yeah,
right. Megan,
exactly.
it sounds like you've had some incredible people in your journey so far that you've been blessed to have walking this journey with you. If they were all on the show here today, what would you want to say to them?
Thank you. Um, Please don't leave my side. This is, we're not stopping. It's not going to get any easier. If anything, the problems are going to get bigger and the decisions are going to get heavier. And, I need every single one of you who've been there. And thank you to the people that are to come. I mean, really, it's all about that.
Fantastic. Well, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
To everyone who tuned in, thanks for listening to the Self-Made as a Myth show with your host, Coach Tim Campsell. Be sure to help us spread this movement by liking the show and posting it on your social media. And to join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. All right, folks, that's a wrap. Make sure to pay it forward, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.